One of my favorite things about Berserk is the world building. Yes, I love the character development. Yes, I love the journey of the characters and all of that. But when it comes to the world building, it's one of the things I find very fascinating about the world of Berserk. I just love the astral layers, to the abyss, to the god, and I just love the entirety of how the world works of Berserk. And this chapter of Berserk was quite the treat for me, because the entire chapter, it had its little moments here and there with some comedy and different things, but majority of the beef of the chapter was world building and having some very insane revelations that I honestly did not expect. I've been wondering for a long time, and many of us have been wondering for a long time, and with this chapter, a lot of questions were answered, more questions were raised, and also it was an amazing chapter. So, diving headfirst straight in this chapter, one of the things I saw in this chapter that really stood out to me was the old wizards, the sorcerers. They were having like a conversation. They were playing some chess and they were talking with each other. And amongst them talking and playing a chess game together, one of them just exchanges words and says like, "Oh, you were saying like there was like a religious ceremony last night and there was a moon out, and there was no moon out at all. You're such a liar. You're having bad behavior." And instantly when I saw that dialogue, when I first read the chapter, I didn't think much of it. But then when I reread it again, I'm like, wait a minute. This old man is straight up saying, you were, to the other old man, like, you were talking about, like, some form of ritual last night, and then on top of that, you're saying that there was a full moon, or some form of moon. And I'm like, didn't we have a moon? And he's saying there was no moon? I'm like, okay, granted, the man is old, he could be kind of senile, but still, he was talking about a moon, apparently there was no moon. Now, I want to show you something. This is the latest volume of Berserk, okay? Volume 38. It literally just came out very recently, like less than a month ago. This is the newest volume, and it has the newest chapters, up to the point where Guts arrives onto the Fairy Island. It's exactly where it goes, like where, this volume ends off of. And the night before we get to the daytime, to where, Guts and his crew are currently at when they land on the island, the night before, there is a full moon. There is a full moon. Yes, if you don't believe me, literally, this is the scene to where you have it to where Rickert, he's, flying off, Griffith's looking at him in the distance. Here is a full moon right here. If you remember, in Guts' timeline, when we were shifting over to Guts, we saw the Moonlight Child and we saw the full moon. Remember that's exactly happened. And so when you think about it, like, whoa. The old man said that there was supposedly no full moon last night. And on top of that, there was like some form of religious ceremony going on that didn't happen. So, that old man straight up saying something like that, it adds a lot of questions, because as I've already talked about in my previous review of Berserk in the previous chapter, is that there is a likely possibility that, where Guts and everybody has entered into, this Elf Island, as we know, there is a possibility, since he entered it, it's a different form of astral layer, time could be distorted to where many years can pass on the outside, while inside, maybe like a couple days could pass, or a couple weeks, maybe even months. And that is the crazy thing. So the time Guts and his, entire crew gets out of this island, maybe 50 years or maybe a couple years could pass outside, and Griffith's already taken over the world and something is completely happened that you would never expect. And so with this dialogue from the old man in the chapter, I felt like it was some form of subtle writing and foreshadowing to possible events of what's going on. Because as we know, since time is different in both sides, obviously some of the sky might be different, and that's why maybe the old man didn't see any moon at all. That's a likely possibility, even though there was a moon the night before. So just pointing that out. That was very, very interesting how that dialogue was done. It might not have any meaning at all, but knowing how Kentaro works and how he writes Berserk, I'm willing to bet it has some form of meaning to the future events of Berserk. Now, that is just the small portion of what I wanted to talk about when it came to this chapter. For one, the biggest point about this chapter is the world tree. The world tree is the central foundation of this chapter, and the meaning and the hidden meaning that has been built up for a very long time, for multiple volumes. Yes, multiple. Not one, not two, not even three, not even four, not even five, not even eight. More than that. Like, since volume 14, yeah, no fucking shitting you. Since, like, volume 14 and 15, it has been built up. And you're probably like, What the fuck? What are you talking about, Chibi? So let me get into the information that this chapter gave us. So we found out more about the World Tree, and it's kind of obvious. I think everybody by now has heard some form of, lore or, folktale about the World Tree. I mean, if you're into Norse mythology or anything, you kind of have an understanding what the World Tree means. And in this chapter, it kind of clarifies what the World Tree means in the Berserk verse. And the World Tree connects everything. It connects all of the different layers, the astral layers together, and also because of it existing in the physical realm, the physical plane of the astral layers, it made a hole straight to the darkest parts of the astral layers, which is the abyss, where the God Hand is. Now, before I go any further with that, talking about other things, we also found out that apparently the World Tree, it's all around the entire world. It's connected everywhere, it has its branches and roots everywhere. And there is some parts of the world where there are these great forests, these great woods. And one of the great woods that we have seen in the series of Berserk was Shidoke's actual home, where she came from, where she was raised at, that her home was actually a greater wood. And now let's think about what happened to her home. It got burnt down and her teacher died. Okay, she died. And when you think about it like this, okay, so the greater wood was burnt and everything was destroyed. The entirety of that place was completely destroyed. And majority of us, when we actually read that volume of Berserk, we were like, why would Griffith go that far? Why is he scared of one witch? Why is he scared? And why would he go this far to just destroy this place? What the fuck? And now with this chapter, everything is revealed. So, the Greater Woods are some form of spiritual mistletoe. That's how you can kind of symbolize what the Greater Woods are. And as we know, the Greater Wood is like a different form of astral layer. It's like, the next layer above the physical realm. And the Greater Woods, it is actually a spiritual mistletoe where it leeches off the branches or roots of the World Tree. Instantly, let me explain. As you know, mistletoe, it's actually like a parasitic type plant, and it leeches onto trees, and it kind of absorbs nutrients from them, and it can actually kill branches of trees. And so in this case, a spiritual mistletoe, which is the Greater Woods, this great tree or this forest, it was leeching off the World Tree, making the World Tree not have the strong power or spiritual presence in that area. It was thanks to the spiritual mistletoe. Now, going even further with this, as we know, Griffith destroyed the forest. The apostles came in, demons, all that, just destroyed the entirety of the forest. The forest is pretty much fucked now. It's gone. So what does this actually mean? That means that the World Tree in that area is not having a spiritual mistletoe leech off its life force. So the mistletoe, the parasite, was removed completely. Now, what reason why Griffith would want to do this? Well, what happened in, the volumes in the middle of the war when we saw the Emperor? Think about it. The World Tree was spawned. It came about, and because of this, the great city came out. It popped up, the entirety of the city where Griffith now rules. And thanks to that, the World Tree being there, it now has a presence to where all the astral layers are now intermingling and fusing together. Where now natural humans that in the physical realm that normally could not see spiritual beings can now see spiritual beings. Now, Griffith destroying that forest, he was actually doing that for he can make the presence of the World Tree much stronger in the physical realm. Because if you remove parasites, what generally happens to the life form if a parasite is removed? Well, for one, the actual general host gets better, heals, and is actually a lot healthier than it once was. So what would happen to the World Tree if the, Greater Woods was removed, or the spiritual mistletoe? It would get healthier. So Griffith was destroying forests to make the World Tree stronger, to where when he finally made the World Tree come about and form again, then all of the astral layers can mix together. So that's what his goal was. Now, going back to what I said earlier, you're probably still wondering why did I say volume 14 and 15. Let's go back to the Lost Children arc. Now, I'm not even going to get into how upset I am now with the anime after how this chapter lets us know how important the Lost Children arc is. I'm not even going to get into that. I refuse to even get into that. I'm not going any further. But talking about the arc and what it means now after this chapter, we know now that there are some areas around the world that they have these different parts about them that can connect to the astral layer, the next layer above. and people can accidentally venture into these lairs. Children have. We even heard a story in the Lost Children arc where a boy went in, and 100 years passed, everybody was gone and dead. He didn't know anyone. And that's when he went into this forest and he ventured in there. A lot of time passed. Now, as I've already discussed in my previous chapter, that's a possibility of what might happen in, once Guts and all of them leave the island. Many years could possibly pass. But getting off of that, though, with the forest that the boy was in, that was the exact same kind of location to where Guts fought the Elf Queen Apostle. Think about it. The forest that was there, we did find out that forest a long time ago, it did have elves. Elves were there, and it was some form of different type of astral lair the way it kind of worked. And what happened to that forest in that time when Guts went there to the Elfin Queen Apostle to kill her? The forest burned down. The forest got burnt to the fucking ground. And remember, after that event, after that fight, the Skull Knight popped up and he got the behelit from a tree that was burnt. And that was, we were assuming, from the Apostle. So when you factor all of this in, what did Guts do when that forest was burnt down? He destroyed, once again, another spiritual mistletoe. Something that was weakening the world tree. Now, we do know that Guts, he can make ripples, okay? Against the actual destiny or the flow of the natural destiny. He can make ripples and change. But because of this, some of the things that happened, he was kind of still in the palm of the hands of destiny. And also the idea of evil. And he was actually doing what the God Hand and everybody else wanted him to do. He destroyed that apostle, which needed to happen, and the forest needed to burn down to also set up for the World Tree many volumes ahead to finally come about. Now, we don't know exactly how many of these woods have been burnt to the ground or destroyed. From what we found out was, not many of them are left. Not many at all. And it's thanks to different things that have happened in the past. And I'm willing to bet it has some part to do with what, Guts did in the past, how he burnt that forest down, but also maybe what other demons have done, or what the God Hand have done, what Griffith has probably done that we're unaware of. We just can probably assume that majority of this was destroyed for the very setup of the World Tree to come about. Now that that is said, and now we know how important the Lost Children arc was to this arc in general and this chapter, holy shit. Just the setup of the story is just ridiculous. It's mind-blowing when you take a moment to factor all of that in. So, yeah. Guts did exactly what the God Hand and the idea of evil wanted him to do when he did that. Damn. Now, moving past that, overall the chapter was a spectacular chapter. I was a big fan of it, start to finish. A lot of setup, but I guess a very slow-paced chapter, with some, world building. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that the artwork overall, I noticed it was, once again, very light. It's probably because of the scans it's causing. I've seen a lot of scans do that, like, how Tokyo Ghoul, when it's scanned, it's very dark compared to the actual real, digital translation that, the magazine does. And the scans just look completely different. I'm willing to bet that's kind of what's going on with Berserk, but the lighting of the chapter looked completely different, and on top of that, there is some artwork I noticed that looked really fucking off, and it's not necessarily bad, because the artwork looked absolutely gorgeous, but when it came to the, the panel with Casca and Farnese, there was this panel that looked so off. You just see the way Farnese was drawn with Casca, and Casca was eating in the back of the panel, and it could be because of that. They were eating, that's why their face kind of looked a little bit weird, but overall, the design of the style of their faces just looked very off to me. Hopefully, I'm not the only one that noticed that, but I just wanted to point that out. Oh yeah, and one last thing before I end this video, let's talk about what Guts was saying at the end of the chapter. He was talking about Griffith, okay? And he finally revealed to his entire party that he knew Griffith. He knew the Falcon. He knew who Griffith was. And this instantly is a huge, huge revelation for the manga. And now, I've already discussed this. I didn't want to talk about it, but I already discussed this kind of in my episode 2 of Berserk, reviews, the anime review, and I said that Farnese shouldn't have known about Guts. Like, Farnese should not have known about Guts' identity and who he was and what he was a part of. She shouldn't have known he was really the Black Swordsman that had that connection to Griffith. She should have had no idea at all. She kind of was aware and, has speculation now in this part of the manga, but she shouldn't have known at that time. And it just really upsets me how the anime, once again, is just getting, you know, showing how bad it is, and how Kentaro is actually passively shitting on it with this chapter. So Guts reveals who he was to his party, and everybody's kind of shocked. Isidro's kind of brain dead because he doesn't even realize that who Guts really is. But regardless of that fact, though, Guts talks about Griffith, and he's like, Griffith is a man that continues to seek higher heights. And we know this. And he actually says that Griffith won't stop at his kingdom, wanting a country. He won't stop there. That is just a stepping stone. Instantly, when that is said, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what's Griffith gonna do? Like, it really throws a big fucking wrench into your thought process. You're like, whoa. That makes a lot of sense. Because I remember talking about this a long time ago, when the astral layers fused all together, when the world tree came about and all that. I talked about what is the goal here, what is the actual goal, what's the God Hand trying to achieve now. I mean, maybe they're trying to come out of the deepest part of the astral layer and finally come to the physical realm. That's a possibility. But now seeing this, there seems to be more here going on. Since Griffith wants to seek higher heights, what if, hear me out, what if Griffith wants to become God? If he wants a country, and he finally has achieved that dream, he got what he wanted, what's the next step, kind of? He's, in a way, on a similar level as the God Hand. He's an equal to all of them. All the rest of the God Hand. He's not higher than them. And it's been hinted, which, as we know, the idea of evil is kind of a lost chapter, and it's up to speculation if that's canon or not, but we do know that there probably is some form of God higher than them. So, what if Griffith wanted to become God? What if he wanted to achieve something even higher than the God Hand? And his entire plan is to do that. What if that is his goal? What if he's trying to achieve that? Just throwing it out there. So anyways, you all have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.